with it, Andrew, though, and with me, the one you wish you could throw out in the middle of the ocean, Keith,
Hello.
and returning to us, the one we dug up at the bottom of the ocean, our special guest, my brother, Aaron.
Well, I think this is this my 5th episode with you guys?
At the least. I mean, I feel
Yeah,
like,
I might be a
especially in the
little
last
more.
year, you've probably done a few just in the last year alone.
right.
Probably go with that. So this week, Aaron picked the episode. He really wanted to play Still Wakes the Deep by Chinese Room. Or is it The Chinese Room?
I think it's the Chinese Room.
It is the
You're
Chinese
right.
Room. Still Wakes the Deep is a first-person it's a horror puzzle game where you are playing a electrician on an oil rig in the 1975s, where you are digging through the bottom of the ocean and you discover some sort of unearthly thing that starts to attack the rig and transform your fellow crewmates. So you are trying to get off the oil rig and survive this nightmare. But going around, Aaron, was this a game or pass for you?
This is a game. I would almost put this close to a definite game for me. Obviously, we'll spend plenty of time breaking down why I like this game so much. But this kind of came out of nowhere for me. I had no expectations going into this, and I'm not even somebody that necessarily likes horror games. I don't really play that many of them at all. But this one, it hits and kind of like scratches that itch for a bunch of different categories for me. So for me, this is a game for sure.
How are you, Keith?
So I remember seeing Still Wakes the Deep. Was it on like an Xbox showcase or something?
Yeah, it was on a couple.
And I remember thinking, what a cool idea. A horror game set in the middle of the ocean. That seems terrifying. I don't like the middle of the ocean, even though I'll never be there. And so I was kind of into it. It didn't hit for me the way that I thought it would. I do still think it's a game, and largely because of its time to beat. But I think if it were a longer game, I would have really not been as into it at all. So it is a game, but it's just barely a game for me.
And then for me, I'm actually give this a pass. I know. So when I played it and I beat it, I was like, okay. Then I thought about it, and I was like, who would I recommend this for? And I wouldn't recommend it for a horror person because this game is not scary. I would give it like a 2 out of 10 on scare. I wouldn't recommend it to someone who's into puzzles because the puzzles really weren't there. So the only person I'd maybe recommend it for is someone who really wants a good story. Because I that's the only thing, the saving grace. I like the story. I like the acting, but overall, I was not impressed with Still Wakes the Deep. So yeah, I think I'd give it a pass. I do agree with you, Keith. It's a very short game, so it is kind of one of those things of like, yeah, if you want to pick up a story, this is definitely kind of something that's worth it. But yeah, I think the audience for this, unfortunately, is a little limited. But yeah, let's get into the story of Still Wakes the Deep. As I said, it takes place in 1975. You are playing this electrician who got this job in this oil rig because you're friends with the cook. You slowly start to learn about your life back on the mainland. Oh, which this also takes place right off of Scotland, which, by the way, great locale that they did this. I highly recommend you put on English subtitles because the Scottish accents are very hard to understand. But
well, it's not even the accents. It's they do
abbreviations.
Again, I got a ton of things that I really like about this game. But one of the things that I like on the immersion level of this game is that they switch. Like sometimes they'll speak in English, but then they'll use phrases that are, I think it's all in Gaelic, right? So it's Irish.
Yeah.
So they'll switch in between there, and I think that's a very realistic way for people that probably live in Ireland, where they're going to speak in English, but they're going to speak in Gaelic at times. So they're going to flip kind of back and forth. So I like that when you're reading the subtitles, it's always in English, even though you hear them kind of saying something in Gaelic, and you kind of like, oh yeah, I can kind of hear that's what they're saying, even though you're like you don't know what they're actually saying. that is one of, again, many aspects of this that I really love is the voice acting.
Yeah, the whole, like I said, idea of being on an oil rig in the 1975s, which, by the way, the year 1975, it didn't
Okay,
play
there we
too
go.
much of a
Thank you.
part. What?
You specified the year 1975 because you kept saying the 1975s, like there was more than one of them.
Yeah,
There's
it's
only
like
one.
in
19
any one of them. There's like 6 1975s. It was in one of those.
Yeah, so it was, I'm glad you specified the year 1975. That's very big.
I guess that's
difference.
what I'm trying to say. It's 1975-ish, but I guess I looked at the website. It actually says 1975. But anyway, the only part that's important that plays in that is their radio sucks. Besides that, like, it's not like the environment looked like the 70s. You see a TV that's kind of old, but that's about it. But yeah, I loved the idea of this in an oil rig and then the people here. But yeah, as the story goes, you find out that you ended up fighting somebody in the mainland, and so you ran from that. So the cops are after you, and you start off the day where the boss found out that you are being chased by the law, so he fires you on the spot. But of course, the oil rig ends up drilling into something that unleashes a horror on this oil rig, and you are just trying to find a way to survive and get off. But yeah, I liked this story. Like I said, this is the strongest point of this game is the acting and the story. I will say I wish the game did a little more with the people, because you literally talk to a handful of people for a couple sentences and then it's boom, event happened, everything's going on. I wish it was a little more, but luckily the voice acting and the actual like writing in it is good enough that I still felt drawn in, which is an impressive feat.
Well, so this is where I have a little bit of an issue too, because largely I thought it was an interesting story, but you have these moments where people, I don't know, I don't want to say who, but people don't make it at points, and your character is very emotionally charged over some of them, and I don't know why. Yes, some of them you have some connections, but even throughout it, they don't really give you any backstory as to why they're so close.
Yeah.
Or any current reason why they're so close. And so it's just like, I can kind of surmise a little bit of it, but largely cool. I didn't really I'm not going to miss that person any more than the last person.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta say, I know that you're talking about story, but you're also bringing up setting, and the setting is one of my favorite things about this game. And I've got a lot of things that I do like about this. And one of the things that really sticks out to me is that setting, because I think to properly nail a survival kind of horror game, you need to have claustrophobia. Like, the claustrophobia has to kind of make sense. And there's other horror games that you make that set up the rules for claustrophobia, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of, you're kind of forcing that. They could just leave at any point here.
Yeah.
What was that one we recently played with the werewolves? It was almost like one of those Telltale games.
With the werewolves? Do you mean that? Are you talking
Yeah,
about?
it was.
Are you talking about like the quarry?
Yeah, the quarry. Okay.
Well, we didn't do
I
an
didn't play the
episode on
Quarry.
that, and that's kind of a
No,
spoiler.
No. I'm just saying us. We didn't really. I know you guys didn't do an episode on that, but I'm just saying
Okay.
when we were playing that.
Oh,
the
a
rules-
spoiler here.
The rule set there was it's claustrophobic, but it's really not. Like, the rules are just kind of like set in place to make it there. This is they're legitimately stuck out in a tight quarters in the middle of the ocean. There is no way out. There is no way of and I love that setting. The fact that they picked 1975, I think you're right. Fine, there is
1975s.
Yeah, the
somewhere in the
1975s.
1975s. And you're right. Maybe that was their way of kind of limiting technology, and they just said, like, well, we just don't want technology to play a factor here, so this is how we're going to limit it. Maybe that's the reason why they do it. But either way, it still felt like a very clear direction. And fine, I'll give it to you. There isn't a lot, like, from when you start the game to when things go wild and go sideways is like 15 minutes. So characters are kind of meeting along the way. You are literally having very short conversations with them. However, I still think the implied of what's happening, and obviously he was on this, this platform or drill, and he knows these people. He's been working with these people. They talk to him as if they know them. They're talking to him and having a conversation with us as if they know them. Yeah, I think you probably would still be a little messed up if some of those people are dying along the ways and the ways that you're seeing them. I don't think I needed much more than that. I didn't think I needed an intimate moment with every single one of them for that to make sense to me. It makes sense with the exception of, I think there's obviously one character that they really lean into his death.
Yeah.
And it is like that they do a very good job of this person was specifically way important to him. And it makes a whole lot more sense why this is leaving an impact for him. And so I thought everything made sense. I didn't feel like, I didn't even know that guy. It felt like, oh yeah, this was my coworker. I worked with them, even though I, the viewer, only got to see them briefly. I know why you'd be feeling this way right now. It doesn't feel like, why is he acting like that? We don't even know him. All that stuff was cohesive to me. So I didn't really have any major issues with that. I felt like I'm not saying the pacing itself is its strength, but the pacing was right for this game of just keep it moving and it doesn't have to drag out any longer than it needs to.
I do agree with that, but I think there's a big difference between cohesion and immersion, because you talked about how you liked the immersion of the language and the subtitles and all that. Part of a video game is if the player sitting in my chair am going to care, it's not because I can kind of understand why. I want to feel why. Otherwise, I don't feel it. And so yes, cohesively, I can see that he's been working with him a couple weeks, mind you. So it's not like these are his best friends. He's just started to know a couple of them a couple weeks. And so, yeah, it's messed up. You watch this person who yesterday was tinkering away on some electrics with you, and now they're dead. But it's not that emotional. And I don't feel that because I didn't engage in any of that. I just have to put it together.
I have two retorts to that. I have two reasons why I actually think this job does a better handle on that. One, the person you really do ultimately side with and care for is the main character. It obviously gives you flashback sequences. You learn more about him as you go along. So that is your primary focus. But number two is a very unique thing to the monster, which is, again, one of the many things that I love about this is the monster. It's clearly inflicting people with emotional pain along with physical pain, because everybody that's inflicted by this monster talks specifically about something they're seeing or some type of anguish that's being caused to them. I think it's a very unique way of getting you to care a little bit more. Instead of them being mindless zombie, they're saying things. They're talking about things as they are in pain. And I think that that's actually really good. And in fact, at the end of the game, it's specifically revealed to you with another dying character. What do you see when you get close to it? And I thought, again, that was an interesting take and a unique idea of this monster where they are themselves, they are their person, but a mutated version of it. I like that. So I think that there is actually more to it than just random person, now zombie. There's a little bit more tied into it. Again, that's, I think, a draw for me.
Well, one thing that really irritated me about also too with not being able to connect with these characters, 90% of these characters, I'd say 98% of these characters, you don't see die. They die off screen or you hear screaming. I don't know who they are. Obviously I kind of figured they're dying because they're screaming and saying like, get it off me. But I feel like that kind of stunk too of like, I want to kind of understand more of this horror that is going on by seeing this horror. Instead, it's just, you just hear in a closed door, someone screaming, or you're getting a phone call being like, there's something here. And then the phone call hangs up. And it's just like, okay. I like if I had more visual of who these people are, because even the few people you do see usually get ripped away and like disappear in a fog kind of thing. And it's just like, okay, well, they're dead, but I don't get the weight of it.
But you also see a lot of after effects.
But yeah, but those, and a lot of them don't speak. They're just morphs. Like they are a blob of just flesh.
To me, the fact that things are happening off screen adds to the tension. to me, that's the added level of horror is you hear the horrible thing happening to the person like right outside your door. There was one moment where you walk up to a door and you hear a guy, he's like in the bathroom.
Yeah, and there's a bright light.
Yeah, and he's clearly being killed in there. Do I really need to see that to care?
I would like at least one. I would like at least one to kind of understand what's going on. Like
you kind of, but you see a lot of after effects, or you see people that are currently.
I was gonna say it does seem like it's some sort of like a parasite, because it's like you see a couple people that are almost like early on in the affliction. There's one guy in particular you come up to and you actually talk to him for a moment. I don't think he's really there, but you do kind of talk to him, and then it attacks you. So I think there's a process involved in it, like progressing to the point where all of a sudden you have like the boss guy who, not to jump too far ahead in the graphics, it was the one point that they took that graphic blob and I thought made it really cool when he's chasing you and it's just his face. Yeah. But that's like, other than that, I think, yeah, I don't know. I didn't need to see it happen, I guess, but it still is just all very, like, it's not very scary. I think that you're 100% right that setting this in the middle of an oil rig in the middle of the ocean in the 70s, where you don't have all this technology and communication, great claustrophobia to a horror game. But then there's tons of hiding spots.
Yeah.
I used like 4 of them total, and most of them it was just like little crawl spaces. I never actively used one of the lockers or true hiding spots.
Yeah, you didn't have to. You were safe in the little crawl spaces.
At most, my biggest fear was a little bit of like tension and anxiety on the chase scenes, and typically it was on my 3rd try when I hadn't made it, and I was starting to get a little bit frustrated more than I was anxious. So like, I don't know, or the underwater. Again, water does stuff for me, so like panicky a little underwater, but otherwise not that scary.
I don't know if I needed this game to be the scariest game I ever played or anything like that. I think I fine if you're giving me a scare level on 1 to 10, 10 being the most scary. It's like a 6.5. Wow. To me, it was. To me, yeah, because I still think the chase sequences are still pretty decent. I still think the format itself is pretty well done. And there are very specific themes, or there are very specific connections to this movie, and this might again just be a little bit of things that I enjoy showing up in a video game, but body horror specifically is a very unique horror genre, which is pretty much not necessarily the scariest thing, but it's gross looking, and it's gross. And the moment I start seeing this monster kind of present itself, I'm like, this reminds me of The Thing.
They said they got a lot of inspirations from The Thing,
which doesn't shock me one bit.
Yeah.
And if you watch The Thing's again, an amazing setup. They are in the middle of the Antarctic. There is no escape. They are out there. No one can come for them. I wouldn't say The Thing is scary. It's tense. And it's got a very clever kind of hook to it. But the body horror is what makes The Thing exceptionally kind of unnerving and freaky. And that's where I say I think this is more what it leans into. It leans much more into body horror than to kind of jump scares or things along those lines. So that's why I'm like, yeah, maybe that's why I'm giving it, a 6.5 on the scary level, because I understood what it was trying to do, and I was like, okay, it's accomplishing that. It feels very much like The Thing set on an oil rig.
Well, minus the paranoia, like The Thing. The
that's movie, the hook. The hook movie, of The Thing was that paranoia, and it does not have that. It obviously doesn't have the cloning mimic human thing. So
it very much just as the monster kind of from The Thing.
Yeah, but even like Keith said, like the boss having just a massive face, and he's basically tentacles and a face. That's like, oh yeah, like that is The Thing, where it would do just these weird morphing of bodies where. Yeah,
it'd whip out tentacles to crawl. Like that's very much The Thing.
so there was a part of me that was just like, oh, this is the thing, and I love that. Like, that's awesome. Like, what a great interpretation of that for this. And so those obvious connections worked for me.
See, and that's why I'm surprised I didn't like this game, because The Thing is one of my favorite movies. I love that movie so much. I've seen it so many times. It's just to me, it's a very entertaining movie. Well done. But like this, it just, like I said, I give it like a 2 out of 10. I was not scared at all. Now, I'm getting a little ahead of it, but I think another big issue is the achievements in this game are awful, really bad. Because there's one achievement to die every single way possible, and there's what there's multiple achievements in like dying. So and so like I think that's the other reason I wasn't scared. If a chase sequence was going on, I'm going, I want to die this way, so I'm going to stand here and just let it kill me. Oh, it killed me. Okay, that progressed my achievement.
Okay,
and I think that
so
kind
for
of,
you, it's an achievement thing. I don't
it
even
was.
look at the.
See, I do.
So this is where you and I kind of differ. Like, to me, I could play a game like this, and I just want to be immersed in it. I literally do not care about the achievements. I didn't look at the achievements. Actually, I did at the very end just to kind of see. And I saw a thing about collectibles. I didn't see a single collectible in the entire game. Not a single one.
They're only like really at the beginning, and that's it. We'll get more into the achievements, but I will say that's probably what kind of threw me off the immersion. Because as Keith said, like Keith gets a little scared with like they're drowning, but I knew there's an achievement for it, so I'm like, I'm just gonna sit here and wait to drown, and it takes like 20 minutes to drown. So I was like, okay,
that's way too long.
Yeah, so I was like, this is easy to avoid. So I was like, okay.
But for what it's worth, I like that part. When I'm like actually just saying like, all right, I can like separate myself from
I'm fucking asshole, stupid fucking cat. Fucking hate this cat.
What'd the cat do?
It just jumped on him and unplugged his headset.
Cat's just hanging out. Did the cat bite him?
I don't know.
No, stupid asshole jumped up on my lap and knocked the wire out of my microphone. I hate this cat so much. What was I talking about?
You're talking about we were drowning. You were able
the
to
water.
separate.
But yeah, I was like, just being under the water. There's I think 2 in particular, but one that actually gave me a little bit of just a struggle to figure out where to go. Where even with my flashlight on, it is like pitch black under the water, and I know I'm underwater. And I'm like struggling to get there. It is always those last like 5 seconds of underwater clamoring for the surface that I'm personally holding my breath. Like, those moments get me. It's not fear, but it definitely brings my anxiety up. So I guess that kind of still plays into a horror game. But also another thing this lacks as a horror game, like a feeling of survival, like picking up any items, not just collectibles, but like I only have like Resident Evil, you get like 1 health pack per chapter basically, or something like there's a feeling of need. Like there's none of that. There's, again, not to get ahead on achievements, but there's one called Walking Simulator. This game practically is a walking simulator with minimal horror, and that's where I really was like, it doesn't hit anything.
So what'd you give it for a rating for horror, Keith, out of 10?
1 for the
it almost made him
the water
stop breathing. He almost stopped breathing, and he's going to give it a 1. Unbelievable.
That's good
for
point,
one minor tense moment of the game that really wasn't even scary. It was just.
I've never stopped breathing when I was playing a video game.
I didn't stop breathing. I was holding my breath. There is a major difference between stopping breathing and holding your breath.
Oxygen was not entering your body. So, if we're talking like, if you switch in can we switch into gameplay now?
Yeah, well, that's what we kind of are on.
All right, good. Because I didn't know if you're supposed to officially announce we're moving into gameplay. Gameplay is really my only fault with the game. It's really my only fault with the game, which is it's a game. Gameplay should be top. But you're kind of like moving from scene to scene, but everything in between is the same.
Yeah.
I'll say, to me, what makes this game is environment and story and monster. Like, I like all 3 of those, but to me, that was like the core of this. So all 3 of those were good. I was happy. But it was like a guarantee. If you are shimmying across something, that is going to be the moment the oil rig
shakes. Yeah.
Oh, I called those attention checks. That's all it
Yes.
was. It was just to make sure that you didn't take your hand off the controller because all you were doing was pressing forward.
Same thing if you are running and jumping to hang on to something, you will have to hit left trigger because something's going to shift or shake and you're going to fall. And it was just too much of that. But you don't pick up anything. Well, actually, you do pick up things. You do move a few things, and you do use a fire extinguisher. But that's kind of it. And you can pick up things and throw them, but only when there's a monster. So there are some elements there, but there is not much. So the gameplay itself is like just inconsequential to actually enjoying this game because it just doesn't do anything. There's no puzzles. I wouldn't say anything was a puzzle. I wouldn't really describe it as a puzzle. I think
No,
it is
there was a
it's
couple
not
you had to
a
hit
singular-
like switches in sequence.
There's no
like two.
point in time where you're able to go backwards and get lost.
That's true.
That's what I noticed. Is I always knew that if I was able to access the path I was going in the right direction. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know why I was going there. But I mean, yeah, somewhat from the story, but largely I just go forward. Because, well, actually, no, that's graphics. I'll get to that later.
they do have like this map that you can keep coming across.
Oh, I never used it.
Oh,
I looked at it, but that was
I did
it.
at the very beginning, and then I realized that same thing. Like, oh, this is
Yeah.
very linear, so it's kind of impossible. There is one section where I did get a little bit lost, and it was where you were doing some generator thing. So you were going from one room getting chased, and in the other room doing something, and then that didn't work. But I knew I had to go back because I saw a bunch of hiding spots back there.
Yeah.
But I went back and realized, because I've never once had to use the indicator on where I needed to go. I went all the way back and I was like, oh, I should check the indicator, see if I'm
Oh, I
just
forgot that
going.
existed.
Yeah, and then I hit it and I was
Yeah.
like, crap, I had to hit a button back at the beginning. So I went all the way back, hit the button, then had to backtrack. So there was only one section where it did that for me. But other than that, it was very linear.
So I remember watching IGN's review of this before, and I was like, this guy's got to be exaggerating. But he was talking about how there's so much plastered yellow paint to indicate you can go on this, you can interact with this thing. I thought it was an exaggeration, but it is not an exaggeration. There's yellow paint everywhere. So that's why
I kind of like that though.
it did make it easy, obviously, to navigate, but it was just like, where is this yellow paint coming from? Literally
Yeah.
every door handle, yellow paint, switch, yellow paint, ledge, yellow paint. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, especially to the point where it's just like someone haphazardly scattered on and
Yeah.
they leave paint cans there. I was like, what? In the midst of this is someone like, hey, yellow paint, just in case there's one other survivor that can make it across this leap.
It was
But I
kinda
didn't
weird.
know, I didn't mind it because at the very least it made it easy to just navigate. Because otherwise, too, I knew I wasn't looking for side paths. So like when it comes to a game like Senua, which is still very different, but close enough-ish that I'll use this example that I felt like you wanted to explore every nook and cranny and like, oh, is this the right one or is that the right one? I kind of want to go the wrong one first because I want to discover any secrets.
Yeah.
There was none of that in Still
Yeah.
Wakes the Deep.
Yep,
It is
just follow the yellow paint.
follow the yellow brick road is all it was the entire game.
See, the yellow paint, I do agree. It made it easy to navigate, but it kind of like it would draw me out because I'd be like, okay, yellow paint, like where's this all coming from? Because especially too, when you're on like catwalks, there does not need to be any yellow paint. Like you're clearly going across this ledge, you're clearly jumping this gap, but it's just everywhere. And it's just like, okay. But yeah, when it came to the stealthing with the monsters, so easy. The monsters are brain dead. You literally pick up a wrench, throw it across the other room. Like it can be, you could throw a piece of something a mile away. It like usually in a game, it's like, oh, you got to throw it semi close to the monster just so the monster turns around. No.
I think you can hit him with it.
Yeah, you
the achievement.
whip that thing a mile away, and that monster will hear it and just go all the way over there and stare at it for a good 5 seconds, and then I could just easily sneak by. So the monsters just were never scary because you could hide in a crawl space and you're perfectly safe. I'm literally throwing things at the monster. It's looking at me, but it can't touch me for whatever reason because I'm in a crawl space. It was weird.
There's like forever, and not just us, but everyone will joke about, the knee-high brick wall that your Call of Duty warrior can't jump over, and all these things. By golly, this game is such an offender of it.
Yeah.
The amount of times it's like, oh my God, you need to run over to the other rig, take a helicopter, come back here and do all this. But literally there's a box that is up to my chest. And with the amount of parkouring my guy is doing around this dang dying rig, I can hop over that. Or these giant windows that I'm talking to my friend through, I'm just going to crawl through one of those, because otherwise I'm going to go unscrew the little plate on the bottom of the floor and crawl through an even smaller hole that I can somehow fit into. I get it. Its story has to happen, but geez almighty, at least put up a glass window there or something so there's not so blatantly obvious. Put something blocking a door so the door can't open. That makes sense. I don't care then if it's just a brick or knee-high wall. It's blocking the door.
They should have made a joke continuously, but like, that's an OSHA violation. You can't do that. You can't do that. That's against OSHA.
OSHA didn't happen in the 1975s, Andrew.
Oh, that's true.
You had to get to at least the 1982s for that.
That's why they did that. Then when they made the game, they changed it last week to 1975 because they realized
this game isn't up to code. Get rid of it.
They realized that would be a critique.
But yeah, so this is I kind of also compare this to Hellblade: Senua's Saga as well, because like, to me, yeah, Hellblade: Senua's Saga kind of lacked in gameplay because it focused more on story. This game I felt like was trying to add more gameplay. And I wish they went the Hellblade route. I would have much preferred this to be maybe more of a walking simulator and give me more of that story that drove me through this. And I understood the characters and the stuff that's going on. Instead, it was a lot of going from point A to point B to point C to point D to point E. Like, just because of course this thing is, everything's going on in this rig. Now you got to have the rig float. Now you got to have to do this. Now you got to do this.
Hold on. Let's use that argument. Let's play that argument. Let's say Senua's Saga had more gameplay to it. Is that suddenly a worse game because of it?
I'd say yes. I like the shortness of Hellblade because I felt like it was meant to be a ride and it was a vessel to steer you to understand the story and the conflict that's going on with this character. I did not understand the conflict that's really going on with this character besides the flashback snippets it would just feed me, because you're not interacting with a lot of people. And so it's just...
I would disagree. I think that the story itself, literally from the beginning, is very clear on who the character is as a person, why they're there, why, like, what type of pain they have back home, all the way up until the very end of it. The final scenes in the game are very clear as to what the beginning, middle, and end look like for him. That's why I say you guys seem more focused on the external characters here, but much like Hellblade, I think it's way more about the individual in the body that you're moving. That's, I think, where they want your focus to be on. And I think that the game, in my opinion, kind of nails it. It didn't have to be long to get the point across as to what it was.
Yeah.
I can't believe you would say, though, Senua's Saga would be worse if it had more gameplay elements. That doesn't make any sense. Because if this has more gameplay elements that aren't... I think the argument's clear. They're not great gameplay arguments, but there are more gameplay elements. But I don't think that makes it worse. Because
what makes it worse for me is if something is slowing me down, I start to get irritated. Like if something keeps killing me, if I keep losing a sneak element and it keeps resetting that event for me, I kind of get annoyed.
Sure.
And so that's why I feel like if Hellblade was just like, oh, we're going to add more of these puzzles that you're going to do, or this pointless fighting, it just slows it down.
I screwed up, guys.
What?
I have no idea. Well, I know about when it happened, but I have no exactly. I hit stop on my Audacity at about 22 minutes in my recording. I did not realize that. I have no idea. I didn't try to, because I muted myself. Like I didn't pause my recording when I got up.
Well, just start recording now. I might be able to pull the audio from Rumble. Luckily, I'm recording on Rumble.
Oh, okay.
I might be able to do that.
I'm sorry.
What an amateur! What an
I'll admit,
absolute amateur!
I mean, I was gonna start Zencaster with this too.
God, I wish that had happened, and I'm not blaming you. but I wish
What's
that-
Zencaster?
it automatically records all audio
Yeah, you have to pay for
for
that.
parties and stuff.
But yeah,
So you don't have to do this stupid Audacity thing anymore.
Yeah,
Yes.
Audacity and all that.
Oh, that's pretty nice. That's pretty nice.
And you don't have me doing this. At least this is like the first time I've done this. This is
Your,
the
your
first
cat
for
probably
me.
hit it.
Nah, maybe, but I
Because
don't
you're the-
know.
But
Because I don't know where you guys are at in audio. But
35.
I'm at 35.
let's be about 15 minutes. So
But anyway,
10 minutes actually.
so yeah, the gameplay was just a bit lacking on it. Is there anything else you guys want to say about the gameplay?
No, there's not much to add. There isn't much there.
All right. Because so graphic wise, we talked obviously about the yellow paint, and obviously the aesthetic of the the being on an oil rig. The other thing that kind of surprised me though with the graphics. So yes, as I said, you don't see a lot of deaths going off screen. You kind of see like fleshy blobs of aftermath of people. They generally don't look that bad. So that was the other thing too, where I'm like, this game isn't very gory. Because even too, a lot of bodies you see are perfectly whole. You see people die, but then you just see their body and they're whole, and maybe like a little pool of blood underneath their butt, and that's it. Until the very end, like when you get to the last time you get to the corridors, like where the dormitories, there's like people's spilled guts everywhere, ripped off faces, and it's like, where did this come from? This game literally had whole bodies perfectly fine, intact, and now it's just like people shredded open. It was like, okay.
I don't know. I don't know if I don't know where you get to that point. You're literally seeing people
Like melted looking.
shred. Like what are you talking about? Like they've literally got things growing out of their necks, their chests ripped open, their arm and leg is like 15 feet to the left of them. Like, what are you talking about? You literally see that all game long, and then you see a corpse and you're like, where was this the whole game? There's literally people plastered onto the ceiling. You are, like,
It didn't look that bad though to me. It literally looked just like goo.
what are you talking? We were literally talking about how the body horror of the thing, and it's like the interpretations of it in this game, and you're like, no, this is nothing. Wait, that was that they're literally bursting.
So I think you're both. I'm between both of you on this one, because yes, you have amorphous blobs and weird, just assortment of parts, but it kind of did just look like on a very higher quality level, a child was like, here's a scary blob with arms and legs. Like it was but on top of that, and I don't, maybe this is me because I don't know how you graphically make something that doesn't exist look good, but it just graphically, it was like, I don't know, it would like grab at the cage you're in, and it's just this weird, like, it sort of just absorbs around the cage, and it's not good graphically. Like there is no texture to it when you got up close. From a distance, it looked pretty good, and these like flying arms everywhere. But as soon as it got close to me, I was very unintimidated. And again, it becomes very much less scary when the gameplay already, like we talked about, it's physically staring at me through an open door that's a crawl space, so I'm safe. It's just not, I didn't think graphically it was great. And like you have quality and performance mode. I changed it to performance at the beginning because the frames per second are so bad on quality, which is normally not a gripe for me. But then the graphics were so garbage on performance that I went back to quality and just dealt with the frames per second, because it also wasn't very smooth on performance mode either, for that matter.
I don't think I noticed the frame rates.
You didn't feel like it was so slow and like choppy?
Granted, I was doing the walking simulator achievement, so I was walking the entire time. Let's look at that.
Was it worth it, Andrew? Was the achievement worth it?
Oh man, I don't. I got some thoughts on achievements. Wait till we get to that.
I thought graphically the game was fine, not bad. There were like certain things that were like, oh, that was really cool. and then a lot of just Like I thought the details in some of the rooms were really cool.
Yeah.
If you actually stopped and looked at them, they actually did put a lot of items in the room that I thought were really, really detailed. And I really liked that. I also liked the view of the kind of monster thing that's breaking through the ship.
Yeah, and it's
I liked
progressively
that
growing.
it pulsated.
Yeah.
I liked the colors to it. Even when we talked about earlier in the episode, when he's kind of looking into that window and it's just that color, the shimmering light. Like I thought there were some elements where I was like, oh, that's graphically really cool. And it seems really cohesive to what they were trying to build here. But again, that you're also on a ship that's mostly just kind of metal and barrels and boxes and a lot of stuff to look at. Some of the ocean stuff was also pretty decent, but we've seen some amazing water in other games. So it's not like the best looking water,
I
but
feel like the past like 5 games, we keep mentioning the water.
Ocean water was fine, but
Yeah.
the water that you're in is just. I think it's supposed to be oily.
It is.
Which
I
makes
thought it was a nice
sense,
touch. Yeah.
but I don't know. I thought it still just looked like nothing. And it just there was no texture to it. I guess it didn't do anything for me still.
This reminds me real quick. Another thing I kind of enjoyed about the story. I enjoyed your character's reactions of someone being like, hey, you go into that room and do the thing. And your guy goes, F you, you go in there. And I was like, okay, that's kind of nice in a game where the person suggested to split up and your guy's like, no, I've been dealing with this. But of course they always come up with a good point. Like, hey, do you know how to operate the crane? Cause I do. So you need to do that thing. And he's like, fine. But at least
I appreciated that they gave you a reason, that it wasn't like you had to do it. Like everyone had a job. So it made sense that you had to be sort of the savior. Yeah. And actually at one point, one of the guys is like, hey, seriously, like none of us would be left if it weren't for you. So like, thank you. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're not just a whiny NPC.
Yeah. So I did like that touch though. But yeah, going to the voice acting though, like I said at the beginning, the voice acting in this game is actually really good. The accents sound incredibly authentic because I feel like Scottish accent is probably the hardest to imitate. But so these have to be authentic. Yeah. But yeah, it's great. Like I said, the few moments, like you obviously are interacting with these characters a lot, but I was feeling the conveyed emotion, especially near the end, and it's just getting more bleak. And you're just hearing these characters talk. Like it was hitting me a little bit too, which is surprising because, as we said, you don't get a lot of backstory with these characters. You find out one of them had a kid, and you're like, I don't know about that until that moment. But I really like the acting in this game.
Oh my gosh!
I feel like I said that at the very beginning, where I said they did a good job of actually making these characters human.
Yes,
and that's where the draw is. But go ahead, Keith.
Going back to the graphics, and I took a screen capture of this because you just want to talk about really kind of taking away from the moment as that character is dying and you're having this heart to heart with them about the end of the game. Every time they turn, their hair disappears and you have this weird, they look scalped and then they turn back a different angle and then their hair pops back in and it's like, it's just
no, that was the monster. That was the monster doing it.
Well, no, because at first I first thought I was like, oh, geez, this is graphic. Like she got scalped in the process of this. No, the graphics couldn't keep her hair on screen the entire time. And it's just little moments like that where, I don't know, apparently for once I'm the hypercritical one noticing these things, but it's just like, it's a big heavy moment and I'm sitting here staring at it.
Because it was hard to see through my tears. So that's how I missed it.
Tears of emotion and fear.
Man. Yeah, you were too busy hiding your eyes away from the leg that was just glued to a wall somewhere.
It was scary.
But yeah, besides the voice acting though, I didn't think the audio I thought it was a little disappointing. I was expecting more ambient noises of things crawling in vents. Kind of like how Dead Space did. Like if you ever played that, like you're always hearing skittering around you and it's making you like turn around and be like, whoa, what was that? I just heard something go by me. There's really not a lot of it. It does a good creaking and moaning of, being on an oil rig, but I just wanted more of that tension of like, there are things in the wall, like you got to be careful. And I just never felt that.
but they weren't in the wall. They were either in your coworkers or they weren't. Like there was no monsters that were just popping out on you. It was either a big one or it wasn't one. And so that's why I didn't feel like I needed those sound effects, but I wanted more of the like, holy crap, as things are falling apart more, like really make it sound like this rig is about to just crumble. Because you get to points where that thing is just destroyed. And I feel like you get nothing more than like some little creaks and moans here and there.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously have that fight scene or the early scene when you meet your boss when he's been transformed into a monster and he's chasing you down.
Spoiler, Joyce.
Oh, I don't know if that's a spoiler, is it?
No,
It's
I mean,
not really.
you're all stuck on a
Game's
rig
like
and people
3
are turning
hours
into
long.
monsters. Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. So, but like that sequence, you can hear them above you and through different walls as you're trying to like run away through these tight corridors. So there were certain ones where it's like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. But like again, as far as it goes from when you're going from point A to point B, like as long as a monster has not been presented to you, yes, you're not gonna have anything like that. You definitely hear people screaming all over the place.
Yeah.
A little.
But that's the kind of full extent of what you get for sounds. Again, it wasn't like a huge detractor for me.
See, but like, yes, you're right, Keith, where there isn't actual things skittering around you. But this game is so short that I feel like it could at least played with you enough to have you think there's something behind you until you finally realize there wasn't. Because yeah, you're looking at like 4.5 to 5 hours to beat this game. It's very short. So it would have been nice to just had more of that ambient noise of just like creatures around you. So that was
there was a controller
fun.
button to look behind you, but what good was it ever?
Yeah, I know.
Because
I think I
other
did that
than when
once.
you're being chased, and then it was a nuisance because then you're running into a wall and getting captured. So didn't use that ever.
Yeah, I literally did it once. Then I was just like, okay. Same with leaning. You can lean around corridors.
Oh, I
just
didn't
like,
even know that until I looked at the achievements
Yeah.
after I beat the game.
Yeah, it was an achievement.
I guess I could lean.
Yeah, which is, and it's surprising. So the Chinese room, they did Amnesia, Machine of Pigs, which is a very scary game. The Amnesia series is very good. And so that's why it's kind of surprising that like in like those elements of turning around and peeking around corners and playing with a monster was so more prevalent in the Amnesia series. In this one, like I said, it was so easy to just huck a wrench a mile away and the monster just runs away and it's like, cool, I'm good. But the biggest horror of this game though is the achievements. Let's get into that. This game's achievements are hot dog trash. Oh my God, I hated this game's achievements.
I really did not even look at them. Like I got achievements as I went along, and there were a couple times where I died that an achievement would pop up, but other than that, I had no clue what the achievements were in this game.
Yeah. So like, you know, these achievements are bad. One of the most famous, I feel like, achievement people is Macca Guides. He even did a video saying, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the worst achievement ever. And it was the walking simulator one. The walking simulator is to sprint no more than 10 minutes total in this game. So it's a game that's telling you, hey, just walk real slow the entire time. That's how you get the achievement. Like that sucks. Like that's just not fun. And then, like I said, there's achievements to die. So that's why I lost a lot of my fear was to just keep dying on various ways because I'm going to get this achievement. But the worst crime in this game, there's an achievement called Good with Lucky, which is the abbreviation for electricity. And that is to operate all the electrical devices. So turn on a heater, turn on a TV, turn on a radio. That's worth 24 gamer score. Then there's another achievement called Bad with Lucky. And that is to die by electricity. There's 6 moments in the game where there's electricity sparking and you have to die from each single one of them. It's worth 1 gamer score. Like, so you have to get both those achievements. And the Bad with Lucky is very hard to do. The Good with Lucky you can do easily. You can do that like within the second level. But the fact that there's an achievement, like why didn't they make it 20 and 20 or in 5 gamer score? No, they made 24 and the other one 1. What was that? Come on.
Or you can just be like me and just get neither of them.
If you were basically,
I got neither of them because I didn't want to risk it.
Yeah, I think I think at the end of the day, if you are an achievement hunter, this is not your game. Like, do not do it.
Well, it's quick. It's easy to get them, but be careful. You might have to commit.
Yeah.
And there was another achievement that really sucks. There's one to throw 50 objects. I mean, that was easy to do, of like it's 50 different objects, but that was just work. I literally just had to keep picking up things and just hucking them around. And I was just like, okay, whatever. Like, I just got to do this. Oh, but this is another good thing with it's an achievement. Yeah, that's really loud. Where's that coming from? Oh, I think Curtis has his hang on. But anyway, there's an achievement to play the game in Scottish Gaelic. So it does the subtitles. A cool feature, but not really necessary. But yeah, I did it and I was just like, okay, I'm not doing it again. I'm not playing this game again to get that achievement. So the achievements are just kind of a crime.
I was curious though, because it only says complete the game. I was gonna try and turn it on before the end, but it doesn't let you do it when you're in the final round or final checkpoint. So I'm wondering if you turned it on like 1 or 2 checkpoints earlier, if it might proc it. But either way, yeah, I chose not to do that because it just seemed like more of a nuisance than anything. And the other thing that bothered me just about the achievements is these types of games like Senua, you could go back and do like chapter select. There's no chapter select. So yes, this is a short game, but to clean up a handful of little achievements in a game that I just kind of went through the motions on to begin with didn't seem worth it to me. So I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah. But let's get into our final thoughts here. For me, like I said, this game, it's kind of a hard to suggest who it's for. I wouldn't say it's for a puzzle fan. I wouldn't say it's for a horror fan. If you're looking for a good story, I will say it's a good story and good environment. It's on Game Pass, obviously. It's worth your time. It's only 4.5 hours, but it's just, don't go expecting an amazing experience. I by the end of it, I liked the ending of it. I thought the whole story of it was good, but just gameplay of it and the achievements, it was like, I'm like Keith, where I just kind of went through the motions of it. It ended up being a little bit of work, which is sad. I was really looking forward to this game, and it was just for me. I'm gonna give it a 75.
We're gonna send Aaron to go last.
Fine.
All right.
I'll go because I'm just a guest. So as when Anders says he doesn't know who to recommend a game to, you'd recommend it to a person like me. I do not play a lot of horror games. I don't necessarily care for a lot of horror games, but I care a lot about setting and I care a lot about story. And I think that this game nails it in all of that. If you are a fan of The Thing and appreciate The Thing, then you will 100% get this game and it will work for you. Another thing that this game kind of remind me from, and I don't want to necessarily ruin the end, but there's a very nihilistic tone to this game. There's very much all hope is lost. There is no hope. All the way really through the game up towards the end of the game. And in a lot of ways, it reminded me just kind of in kind of theme to the game Inside. Do you remember Inside?
Yeah.
Side scroller.
Yeah.
Which just had this bonkers ending to that game, but it was just this very dark game that also kind of felt like it wanted to be hopeful at the same time. So it kind of gives you this weird tone by the end of it. And this had a very similar feel to it as well. So if you're looking for something, again, that's short, but should be plenty immersive, don't expect to have to do a whole lot. I think this is just kind of a perfect game for that. So to me, if you were trying to dip your toes into a horror game, this is where you start. And for me, I'm going to give it an 88.
I think you said the first really good thing on this whole entire episode, Aaron, at the very end there. Because I have agreed with you a few times, so I can't say the first thing I've agreed with you on. But the first really, really poignant statement is, if you are someone who would like to try and get into a horror game, but you're intimidated by a lot of them, then I absolutely think that this game, or that Still Wakes the Deep, could be a good entry point, because it lacks a lot of the big horror elements that games have. The sparsity of items, the constant fears, there's some of that a little bit, but not on any level that's so crazy. Like I don't know. It's too much for me to get into that horror game. So if you want one to really try to tip your toes into, I think this is a great starting point. But outside of that, if you're into horror games, probably not going to do much for you. If you don't like horror games and you just don't want to get into them, probably also not going to do much for you. Yeah, I still say it's a game in the aspect of I can get through it pretty quickly, and I did really sort of like the story overall. I didn't like the ending. I thought it was kind of dumb.
Oh, really? I liked
Yeah,
it. Because I always hate when a game's too open up for interpretation. This to me had enough
Sure.
of an ending that I'm like, okay.
and that's fine. And maybe I don't need to know what the monster really ever is, but they don't tell you. It's just it's an event, and I don't know. I just have a few gripes with all of that, but otherwise, yeah, I think it's fine. All otherwise is like an actual walking simulator. Just don't actually do the walking thing, because then you'll waste more time than you need to. So yeah, I'm with Andrew, but I'm going to go a little lower because I feel like I was a little more negative. Say 71.
And then on Metacritic, it has a Metascore of 73, and for critics, it has an 8.1. Or no, users 8.1. I got that backwards. But yeah. I think that's about wraps it up here. So thank you all so much for joining us. I've been your hardcore gamer host, Andrew. You can find me next week live, Firebird01952. Go to GamePassGrabBag.com. It'll bring you to our link tree. You'll find all our links. Go to join our Discord. Me and Keith are quite active on there. If you want more of me and Keith, we did guest on another episode of another podcast. It's not out yet, so.
Really good thing for timing. Like, who knows? Maybe you'll listen to this after it came out, before it came out. Really, really good marketing, Andrew.
Hey, I'm just telling. Well, if you let me transition, check out our socials or our Discord, and we'll post it when it's up. So there you go, Keith.
And if you're listening to this in 6 months, I guess go back and look at our socials 6 months ago.
I mean, I'll mention again. Yeah, go ahead, Keith, you jerk.
I've been confrontational and screwed up the podcast as always.
And Aaron, thank you for joining us again.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I feel like your demeanor went down the more and more we just ragged on this game. You were so excited at the beginning of this, and now at the end, you're just like, you look downtrodden and beaten. Like
my whole thing is like, I make points at the beginning of this, and then you're like, you're wrong, and then later on you guys say, and I liked this thing about the game, which was the same thing I said at the beginning. But you know what? Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Welcome to Game Pass Grab Bag, Aaron.
It's the grab bag portion where we take things we like you previously said.
We don't remember what we said 10 minutes ago. So what I hated 10 minutes ago, I'm gonna love by the end of the episode.
That's true.
All right, everyone. We love you all. We'll see you again next week.
Bye.
All right.
It must have. I'm guessing it must have stopped recording when the stupid cat jumped up on my lap. So and it's only and I know it's only 10 minutes, so maybe there's enough that I wasn't speaking through, hopefully, that it's largely you guys kind of talking, that it doesn't screw up. But if not, I'm sorry and I apologize, and I hate my cat as always. And you can hate him too.
Good luck, Andrew.
Yeah, you can hate my cat too, because I already do, and he just gives everyone a reason for it.
Hopefully I can, like I said, pull the audio off of Rumble here. We'll find out.